I never thought my life would come to this. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of loyalty, devotion, and love reduced to a hollow, rotting shell because of her betrayal. Yet here I was, staring at the woman I had promised forever to as she knelt on the floor, her face buried in her trembling hands, sobbing uncontrollably. And all it took was a single letter to bring the mighty facade crashing down. It began months earlier when I started noticing the changes. At first, it was subtle. A new perfume she hadn't mentioned, late nights with vague explanations, a sudden and inexplicable interest in her phone that never left her side. I'm not a paranoid man by nature, but you don't spend years building trust with someone only to have that trust shattered without noticing the cracks. I asked her about it, of course. "Are you okay?" I said one evening when she came home later than usual. She avoided my eyes, her smile forced. "Just busy with work," she replied, her voice tight. I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I told myself that maybe I was overthinking things, that my imagination was running wild. But the signs kept piling up. Secretive phone calls, the sudden appearance of lingerie I'd never seen her wear, at least not for me, and an emotional distance that felt like an uncrossable chasm. Then came the final straw. I found a charge on our joint credit card for a hotel room downtown. When I asked her about it, she didn't even flinch. "Oh, that," she said, barely looking up from her phone. "A friend needed a place to stay, so I booked it for her." "Which friend?" I pressed. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. It would have been easy to lose my temper right then, to demand the truth and let my anger consume me, but I didn't. Something held me back. A quiet voice inside that whispered, "Wait. Be patient." And so I waited. I bided my time, even as my heart broke with every lie she told, every stolen glance at her phone, every night she turned away from me in bed. But I wasn't idle. I started paying attention to the details she thought I missed. The time she left the house, the excuses she gave, the number she was texting when she thought I wasn't looking. I'm no detective, but I'm not an idiot either. It didn't take long to piece together the truth. His name was Marcus. He worked with her, tall, charming, and confident in a way that made me sick to my stomach. I'd met him once at a work event. He shook my hand and smiled, all the while knowing he was sleeping with my wife. Once I had my suspicions confirmed, I could have confronted her. I could have demanded an explanation, screamed, cried, or begged. But I didn't want her tears or her apologies. I wanted justice. I wanted her to feel the pain she had inflicted on me, to understand the depth of her betrayal. So I began to plan. Started small. I'd casually ask her about her day, feigning interest as she fed me more lies. I'd smile and nod, pretending not to notice the guilt that flickered in her eyes. All the while, I was collecting evidence, texts, emails, photos. I even hired a private investigator to follow her when she said she was working late. The pictures he brought back made my blood boil. Her and Marcus at a restaurant, her hand on his arm, her lips on his in the parking lot. I kept everything. Every text, every receipt, every photograph. It wasn't enough for me to know the truth. I needed her to know that I knew, but I also needed her to understand the depth of her betrayal, to see it laid bare in a way she couldn't deny. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Our 5th anniversary was approaching, and she suggested we have a small celebration at home. I agreed, playing the part of the doting husband even as I finalized my plan. The night arrived. I cooked her favorite meal, lit candles, and poured wine. She seemed nervous, fidgety, as if she knew something was off but couldn't quite place it. I handed her a gift, a small box tied with a red ribbon. "What's this?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Open it," I said, my smile never wavering. Inside was a folded letter. She frowned, pulling it out and unfolding it. Her eyes scanned the words, her face going pale as the realization dawned. It wasn't just a letter. It was everything. The texts, the photos, the receipts, printed and laid out in excruciating detail. And at the bottom, a simple note from me. "I know." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with panic. "I can explain." "Don't," I said, my voice calm but firm. There's nothing you can say that will undo what you've done. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. Instead, she sank to her knees, the letter slipping from her fingers as she buried her face in her hands, sobbing. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but only for the man I had been, the man who had loved her unconditionally and believed she loved me in return. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply stood there, watching her fall apart, my silence louder than any words could have been. When her sobs finally subsided, I spoke. "You made your choice," I said. "Now it's time for me to make mine." I had already filed for divorce, the papers sitting on the kitchen counter, ready for her signature. But that wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her actions, to understand that her betrayal wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice, one that had irrevocably changed both our lives. I had also taken steps to protect myself financially. Our joint accounts were frozen, my name removed from any debts she had accrued. The house, bought with my money before we were married, was legally mine. She would have to find somewhere else to live. And Marcus? He wasn't spared either. I sent copies of the evidence to his wife. Yes, he was married too. Her response was swift and brutal, filing for divorce and taking their kids to stay with her parents. His job at their company? Gone, thanks to an anonymous tip to HR about his inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. It wasn't about revenge. At least that's what I told myself. It was about justice, about setting things right in a world that had gone horribly wrong. And when it was all over, when the dust had settled and the tears had dried, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. She tried to reach out, of course. Apologies, pleas for forgiveness, empty promises to change. But I knew better. Some things can't be undone. Some wounds can't be healed. And as I watched her walk out of the house for the last time, suitcase in hand, I felt no sadness, no regret, only relief. Life goes on, they say, and it does. It's not easy, rebuilding from the ashes of what was supposed to be forever. But it's possible. And as I stood there, alone but free, I knew that I'd made the right choice. She had made her bed. Now she would lie in it. And I would move forward, one step at a time, knowing that I had done what I needed to do to reclaim my life.